Hello, good evening, and time now for the Asaase Business PM. My name is Emmanuel Aboagye-Wiafe, and I'm here with my co-host, Rosemary Balami. Tonight on the SDG-Hub, we'll be discussing the topic Catalyst for Change, Youth Inclusion in Climate Change. And remember, we're still live on the Big Bulletin. With us to discuss this topic, Kenneth P K Agyir, co-founder and national coordinator at Youth Alliance for Green Ghana, and Nabeela Abubakari, sustainability advocate and team lead, the Go-To Fair. Business PM is proudly brought to you, kind courtesy, the Center for Sustainable Transformation. This is the SDG Hub. Of course, we discuss and enlighten each other on challenges and opportunities in our everyday life and business to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs as we call them for short. On the SDG Hub, we introduce you to business cases and activities that in one way or the other taking steps towards a more sustainable future here in Ghana and beyond, so that we are all up to date and can take part in the necessary sustainable transformation that we undertake with our companies, households, and public services. Once again, my name is Emmanuel Aboagye-Wiafe, and I'm here with
Rosemary Balami.
Rosemary, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm good. What about you?
I'm very well, thank you. Rosemary is from the Center for Sustainable Transformation. This evening, we have a thought-provoking and timely topic to discuss: Catalyst for Change, Youth Inclusion and Climate Responses. Or should I say, the need to include the youth in our development of climate response strategies and actions, both in terms of adaptation to the climate change situation we are already facing and prevention of further climate change. With the just ended International Youth Day in mind and efforts seen so far to address the climate crisis, it is clear that the voices and ideas of young people are so essential to driving effective change. Don't you agree with this, Rosemary?
The importance of the youth in guiding responses toward a sustainable and resilient future must be highlighted. It is, after all, our future and our children's future we are talking about here. Maybe that is why we are more engaged and we are many more in number than we used to be. Now let's take a look at some data. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, young people increased from 34.6% in 2000 to 38.2% in 2021. This data highlights an important aspect of our changing social landscape. The rising proportion of young people does not only represent a population advantage for the country, but also a once-in-a-lifetime chance to engage young people's vigor, imagination, and resolve in the urgent fight against climate change.
Interesting. Now, as usual, we have a discussion here in our studios, and joining us today are two remarkable climate activists who have been engaged in the climate movement, leading local initiatives to raise awareness about climate change and can provide insights into how youth inclusion can better shape climate responses. We are here with Kenneth Agyir. He's a co-founder and national coordinator at Youth Alliance for Green Ghana. Ken, good evening.
Good evening, Emmanuel.
And we also have a familiar face, Nabeela Abubakari, sustainability advocate and team lead, the Go-To Fair. Nabeela,
hi.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
All right. Well, welcome once again officially. Can you tell us briefly about yourselves? This time I'm starting with you, Ken, not the lady first.
Thank you very much for having me, and very good evening to your cherished listeners. My name is Kenneth Agyir. I'm a youth advocate, and I also focus on sustainability, natural resources governance, and climate action.
Right. Okay, let's go to Nabeela. Nabeela,
hi.
What do you do? Tell us briefly, at least for the sake of the people who have not listened to you before.
Yes. Right. I call myself a sustainable development advocate. I'm the team lead for the Go-To Fair, or the Go-To Initiative, which aims to bridge the gap between knowledge and practice of the SDGs by bringing sustainable, practical solutions to the consumer. I like to concern myself with the integrated approach to achieving the SDGs and a sustainable world. Yeah. Nice to have you. Nice to be here. Sorry.
Oh, good to have you.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go into action. And Ken, could you tell us or share with our listeners why you think youth inclusion is so vital when it comes to tackling climate crisis?
Okay. So, first of all, when you look at this climate crisis, and which I refer to as climate emergency as we face currently, the science, the policy, the action are all geared towards the future. And so you ask yourself, who will be in the future? That future would definitely entail young people and even the generations yet to be born. And so you have a situation, or you have an action, a threat that seeks to affect young people. And it is only important for governments, for institutions to include the very people who stand to suffer the brunt of this climate emergency and the threat, to be part of the action towards tackling the issue. I believe also we are very much concerned about the sustainability or continuity of the action and the decisions we are taking now. And so involving young people who in Ghana we say are the leaders of tomorrow is only critical towards, consolidating the gains we are making now and ensuring that.
But do you think young people that you're talking about are really interested in these climate change crises and solutions to the problems? Because, for instance, in Ghana, youth engagement in climate and environmental action scale is relatively a new thing here. And as a co-founder of Youth Alliance for Green Ghana, how does your organization involve young people in climate responses? And what exactly do you mean by these responses?
Thank you. So I would say the typical Ghanaian youth is very much concerned about climate change because its effects are seen around us every day. There's still flooding. We know the weather patterns in parts of the country. Young people, even who are outside of Accra and who are involved in farming, will tell you at the front line of agriculture how climate change is affecting us. And so from my engagement and from my interaction with the youth of Ghana, I know that they are very much interested in climate change and, most importantly, driving innovation and action towards addressing the issue.
And you think that...
At Youth Alliance for Green Ghana, our very mission is to mobilize young people, put them at the forefront, build capacity, educate them, and ensure that their actions, their voices are heard in the effort towards combating climate change.
And you think for now their involvement in climate change activities has contributed, have made some contributions in Ghana?
Certainly. If you look at some of the innovative ideas and actions which have been taken in Ghana and even across Africa and the world, young people have been at the forefront. There are young people from Ghana who have developed technological solutions, policies, who are contributing to policies, even at the UN level. They're developing systems that would ensure that the climate crisis is not only responded to in Ghana, but beyond Ghana. And so I am very confident in the ability and also the involvement of the Ghanaian youth in the effort towards addressing this challenge.
Right. Let me come to you, Nabeela. What are some of the initiatives led by Ghanaian youth that have effectively addressed climate change challenges?
So, before I answer that question, I think effectively addressed, I can't tell because, we still have
an ongoing
danger. Yeah, we have. But then there are, so I can speak to initiatives that are doing the work and reaping tangible results on the ground. There's one, Recycle Up Ghana, and that tackles mainly plastic pollution in Ghana. And they have an initiative under the Recycle Up Ghana umbrella, the National Waste Education campaign that I was also a part of. In fact, that's where I interned for like 3 years, and I was project manager in a school in Dakuman. And so I can say for a fact that now the students are so excited about recycling. It's a part of them. From the time we started till the end of the project, you will notice that we were recovering gradually more and more plastics than in the beginning, which is an indicator that the work is working. There's Specs Africa, Derek, who was here, combating plastic pollution as well with subscription-based single-use plastic packaging alternative, just the one that we want, just the one that's reusable, just the one that is non-linear and continuing to generate waste anyway that we cannot deal with. So these are two. There's GAIO, Green Africa Youth Organization. There's YRE, that's impacting students, giving them the news, the information they need to push for policy, for better policy, environmental policies. The University of Ghana Plastic Recycling Project, which has done great from its inception till now. Yeah.
So now let's look at policies or strategies. How can youth inclusion in the action against further climate change enhance the overall effectiveness of Ghana's environmental policies and strategies?
I think first of all, the how it can is just how much fresh ideas and innovation it brings. You said it, Ken said it. So the youth, we're the future, right? We are, really.
Yeah, we are.
We're young. We're now about to live life, so to speak. We're anticipating having children. If not us, we're anticipating our friends having children. We're thinking about what the future means for them, right? And we want something better. Again, when you look at intergenerational differences, you notice that with every new generation, there's progress. There's some progress that the older generation did not have. So you notice that the newer generation is always pushing for better. Like, I remember when I was in University of Ghana, we couldn't access our portal to register. And I remember one of our lecturers was saying, but when it was our time, we went to queue. We queued long queues. So what are you talking about? You see, that's how his brain is operating, which is fine. But, we were born into the technological age. So we feel that there can be better. There must be better. And we're going to push for better. So this is the way that we inject, life, passion, possibility, practicality, practical alternatives and solutions into policy.
So in your experience, what barriers do you think that we Ghanaian youth face when trying to actively participate in climate change mitigation adaptation efforts?
I don't know, but I think one of them, I don't know how true this is or practical.
Do you have any personal experience?
I do, but generally, on a general tip, I think one thing I'd like to mention is a cultural barrier.
Okay.
And it's innate, it's right there with us. It's not something that we are confronting as intangibly, but it's right there. When the youth get into a room, when there's time for discussion, first of all, I would have mentioned access, entering the room itself. Outside, there's talk about the youth is the future, youth inclusion, but really the barrier is that door.
We don't have
door that
access.
They are not opening for us to get the access. But when we do get in the room, as per Ghanaian culture, unfortunately, a child is meant to be seen and not heard. When we enter those rooms and we begin to negotiate and we begin to ask for what is due us and we begin to push for considerations, we are not really doing it the way we deserve to do it, because somebody's looking at the other person on the table and thinking, that could be my uncle, that could be my auntie.
So is it that on the part of the youth they are scared to
it's a cultural thing.
Okay.
I don't even know if they are aware that they are scared, but it's a cultural thing where you have to give reverence to the adult. You don't have to push too much. And so now they're in the room and they're like, what the adult is saying is not really making sense. But he's or she's not going to be here in the next 30 years. You are. Your kids are going to be here.
So how do we overcome these challenges?
How I'd say is come armed with the facts.
Okay.
And come armed with with the practicalities. I always say that is why the work of certain youth groups like UGPRP, Specs Africa, Recycle Up is so important, because they pilot solutions, really practical solutions on the ground. For instance, National Waste Education Campaign, it's done the work across 3 to 4 regions. Now, when you're coming from Recycle Up, or when you're armed with what Recycle Up has done, there are no ifs and buts at that table. Okay. You're giving them a blueprint of what has worked and what can be done. Okay. So when you go with your great.
You're great.
Really,
absolutely.
You're great.
Let me come to you, Ken. So do you think Ghana has made any progress with youth inclusion in climate action efforts? Can you provide examples of successful collaborations between, Ghanaian youth and government agencies? Nabeela was saying even the access. So let's talk about that, and also any non-governmental organizations where climate responses are concerned.
Yes, I would certainly say we've made some progress, some remarkable progress, I would say. And as Nabeela intimated earlier on, you can see from the design of the system that young people are mostly excluded from a lot of the decisions, a lot of the action. But when it comes to climate change, even with state institutions, you get some sense of cooperation with youth organization. And I work with a youth organization. I lead a youth organization. And so I know some of the barriers, systemic barriers that we've had to face in the past.
Like?
Just access, just even being listened to. But now you have, even a local conference of youth on climate change in Ghana, which is being hosted this year by Green Africa Youth Organization and Youth Climate Council. And Youth Alliance for Green Ghana is a proud supporting organization.
Fantastic.
And you have institutions like the EPA, you have institutions like the Forestry Commission, and some of these state agencies collaborating, providing resource persons, helping young people to understand the dynamics. You have a program which is a very laudable initiative by the EPA, which is the Young Negotiators for the Environment or Climate, which is a program designed to train young people to be able to understand the climate negotiations and the entire process as pertains to the Conference of Parties, what is usually called COP 28, COP 27. And so you see a lot of collaborative action in that sense. But I believe more can be done. In fact, I have always spoken against that the system of some sort of segregation where young people are put in a room. Young people, you go make your own decisions and you bring your resolutions to the bigger room where the decision makers are. I believe going forward, if we want to take real action and want to build on these collaborations, then we need young people to be in the same room as the decision makers. It's not a youth conference and an adult conference. We need all of us together. We understand the thinking that goes into the policy. We build stronger partnerships, not only to satisfy young people, but to achieve real results. And I think we've made some strides in that regard, and we can still do better.
So, we as young reporters, for instance, we embarked on a campaign at a tertiary institution, and then we realized that the fact that knowledge and awareness on climate action is quite limited. So is this your perception as well, Ken? And what role do you think educational institutions play in promoting youth engagement and awareness about climate issues in Ghana?
Well, educational institutions operate in an educational system or educational regime. And so institutions, for instance, operate based on a syllabus. Of course, they can go beyond that to, shape the character and, some character traits and discipline generally. But if you look at educational institutions, generally we know that they impart knowledge. They're supposed to teach, young people or students what pertains to the very evolution and development of their society. And so it goes without saying that educational institutions should, modify or shape their content around what is going around in the world. And so you go to some countries and it's AI, it's climate change, which is the main focus of the educational system, because that's what is needed at this stage. And so in Ghana, I would say educational institutions are also pushing for it. You have youth organizations like Youth Alliance for Green Ghana. You have Ghana Youth Environment Movement. Ghana Youth Environment Movement has done something very remarkable, drafted a curriculum for green education in schools. And so that's something that I'm sure they are lobbying for, but to get climate change education to be part of the very curriculum, if students are going to be assessed on it, if students are going to be trained on it, then it must be formally recognized. But I would say that educational institutions have a role to play. Climate action, environmental accountability starts from your houses, the home, churches, workplaces, the very institutions that mold our lives even beyond our classrooms should also take a key part in educating to practical action with segregation, things that.
But don't you think it's about time Ghana adapts that education system to, meet the current challenge? I remember we used to do environmental studies in school.
Exactly.
And then I realized now it's like they've been merged with social. No.
Exactly.
So what do you think about that
This is the time we need environmental studies. In fact, practical environmental studies. And I would always say that the teaching materials are around us. This is when you embark on excursions to go to communities and see what is happening. And you don't need much. In fact, if we seek to design a policy or educational content around climate change, I would suggest that for most part of that policy, students should be out of the classroom. They should see what is happening beyond the academics of it, and understand how they can invent practical solutions. Right,
interesting. Let me come to you, Nabeela. Now, we've been talking about the effects of culture and customs and traditions having an impact on the willingness to adapt to climate change solutions. Now, how do these cultural practices exactly influence the willingness to listen to young people, especially involved in climate-related cases in Ghana?
How do these affect the willing?
Talking about customs, the culture, practices that you mentioned.
I guess it's just the whole perception that a child cannot challenge an adult, or a child doesn't know more than an adult, or that what an adult sees sitting, a child cannot see standing. But I think that what we need in this fight is just the enthusiasm, the fresh blood, and the passion of the young people, and then the wisdom of the older folks. The truth is that the older folks have walked walks that we haven't walked, and they've seen things that we haven't seen. But then we have the new insight that they don't. We have the perspectives that they don't. We have the zeal, the anticipation, the excitement for the future that they don't. And of course we have the energy that they don't. And so that's why, like Ken said, it's time we sat in the room with the decision makers. There's nothing stopping us from being decision makers by virtue of our age. We meet them in the rooms, we have those conversations, we meet in the middle, we make the consensus, and we move from there, making decisions that benefit people, planet, the now and the future.
Fantastic.
And if I may add, and one aspect of our culture which I think would be very beneficial in our approach to tackling this climate issue is our storytelling.
Okay.
We've come from a place where people will not go into the forest on a Tuesday because they believe that you don't have to go there. And these were all part of our effort to protect our forest, which also tie into climate action. And so I would say that the aspect of our culture which needs to be revived very much for us to make some gains.
So let me come back to you, Nabeela. So how does the representation of youth voices in policy making discussions impact the formulation, or let's think like implementation of effective climate strategies in Ghana?
Again, I think I'll just continue to repeat myself on there. It's just the innovations, but then I'll point to entrepreneurship as well. Great. When you look at the entrepreneurship space in Ghana, in the sustainability space, there's a lot of solutions coming up, practical solutions, practical alternatives. Again, when you look at the work of the youth-led initiatives, there's a lot of practical work being done on the ground. Maybe it's in certain catchment areas, but it's very much work that can easily be adopted into policy. Standing on these solutions, the work of these entrepreneurs and solution providers, it's even easier to pilot those policies into action. Again, looking at these alternatives, these practical solutions, when the policies do pass, it's easy for the policies to actually work because there's practical facilities to make sure that the policies work. So for me, this is how young people do it, just in innovation, just in passion projects, which are a lot. But then one thing I would say before we move on is that one thing that we as the youth could do to amplify our voices more is to ignore the siloed approach. You will notice there's so many solutions, so many initiatives. Unfortunately, it's all siloed. We need to look to an integrated front. There's power in unity, and it will be louder there.
Right. Unfortunately, we don't have much time. We have to wrap up. But before then, I would like to to you to give a message for young people listening to this program who are so passionate about addressing climate change and who are actively trying to get involved in climate action? Ken first.
Okay, so I would simply say that there's a lot of work ahead of us, but we are equally qualified for it. For the young people out there, I believe, as Nabeela said, we have to come together. We have to share ideas. We have to build innovation. And most importantly, we should consider this climate crisis as an opportunity for us to shape our collective future.
Okay.
So,
Nabeela.
To the youth, I'd say we need to act. It's a tough business environment. It's tough times, but we need to stand on our ground, move those innovations, start those businesses. The solutions, yes, they lie in the words, in the advocacy on social media, but they also lie in your juice. That is your creativity. Those business solutions, they lie there. And if the policymakers aren't listening to us, let's continue to push their innovations. Let's continue to bring those out. When we bring those into their faces and we push those conversations, I'm very sure that it will be easier for them to listen and act.
Absolutely, indeed. Let's continue to push as youth. Thank you, Nabeela and Ken, for joining us today to shed more light on the critical topic of youth inclusion in climate responses. That's all the time we have for today's discussion on Catalyst for Change, Youth Inclusion in Climate Responses. Make sure to tune in same time next week as we continue discussions on all things sustainable development right here on Asaase Radio 99.5 so that people and the planet can prosper. If you have a topic you would like us to discuss, shoot an email to SDG-Hub@CeST.org. Remember, dear listeners, the future is in our hands and it's our responsibility to ensure a healthier planet for generations to come. Keep raising your voices, keep advocating for change, and keep tuning into the SDG Hub for more insightful conversations. Until next time, stay informed and stay inspired.
And thank you so much for staying with us on the SDG Hub. We've been speaking to Kenneth P K Agyir, co-founder and national coordinator of the Youth Alliance for Green Ghana, and Nabeela Abubakari, sustainability advocate and team lead at the Go-To Affair. I've been your host, Emmanuel Aboagye-Wiafe, together with
Rosemary Balami.
We go back to Peaches for the wrap, the big bulletin.